Hello and welcome to another fascinating lesson in Python programming. This lesson is going to be part 2 of our studies on web scraping. And web scraping is an important skill to have, and it will help you extract information from the internet, from the web, and use it in your application. This helps you when you are connecting to APIs, and this helps you when you are doing data analysis, and it helps you to extract a lot of information using Python. Python is a powerful tool, and with this particular lesson, you'll be able to do a whole lot in Python. And as a beginner, as you learn this skill, you realize that tomorrow you are going to build upon it to do bigger things in the future, okay? So as you take this lesson, it expands your understanding of Python, and very soon you will see that you are doing greater things. Now, the little things you learn in Python, when it is time to apply it in the field, you realize that you bring all the pieces of knowledge together to be able to do wonderful things. So Python can do a lot, but then they all come from the little pieces of concepts and knowledge you've gathered in Python. All right, so let's get into this lesson. And before we do, I have a quick motivational message for you. I always like to motivate my students. So this one says that it does not matter how slow you go, as long as you do not stop, you will get there. All right, so it does not matter how slowly you go, as long as you do not stop. So this is important, and we've said it time and time again. As you are building skill, you may be moving slowly, but you will get there. It doesn't matter how slowly you are moving. So long as you remain consistent, so long as you keep doing it, you are going to make it. Yes, this is very, very important. Sometimes when you are learning something like Python or HTML or CSS, you'll be asking yourself how I'm going to apply this. Why am I learning this? How will I apply it? You have no idea that you can't be a tech professional without that knowledge. Tomorrow, you are going to rely on it heavily. All right. So right now, you just need to learn it. Keep learning. Keep learning. Keep learning. If you can hear me in the chat, please put keep learning in the chat for me. Keep learning. Keep learning. Maybe you're a slow learner. It doesn't matter. Just keep learning. You will see that you will build that momentum. You become that skilled professional. You become that powerful person. There is no expert who had the knowledge when they were born. Every expert was once a beginner. All right. So for you to be a highly skilled, highly paid tech professional, you need to keep learning, and you need to be learning basic things little by little, little by little, little by little. Last time I mentioned that when all the animals were commanded to go into Noah's Ark, you know, there are some animals who are so fast they ran into it. There are others who are so slow, like the tortoise and the snails. But guess what? They too, they got there. All right. So you too, you'll get there, even if you're a slow learner. So keep learning and you will get it as long as you do not stop. All right. So this is me once again. And this is my 20th year in the tech industry. I've experienced a lot, explored a lot, and I've been teaching for the past 10 years. This is part 2 of our lesson on web scraping, extracting and analyzing data from the web. This is a valuable skill that will help you in your journey, And Python is going to help you do so many things in future. This is part 2 of lesson 16. All right. So what is web scraping? Last week, I gave you the definition of web scraping. I want to find out who still remembers the definition of web scraping. What is web scraping? Tell me, what is web scraping? When I ask you what web scraping is, what are you going to say? Yes, don't do any lookup. Just try and remember. I want you to refresh your memory. So I'm doing a quick recap to what I taught last week. And After you tell me, we will continue. So let someone tell me what web scraping is. What is web scraping? This lesson is so important that it will help you work with a lot of APIs. You know, one thing that makes Python good is the libraries that Python supports. Number two, the APIs that Python supports. And this lesson builds your understanding on API and also builds your understanding on extracting data from the web. So collecting data from websites, provided the website allows it. Thank you, Brian. Brian has included the best practices and what you need to understand in terms of ethical considerations. Brian has added it. So when it comes to web scraping, there are some websites they don't want you to scrape their websites, and so they put in their terms and conditions that you shouldn't scrape them. Yes. So sometimes if you have a project and you need to scrape a website, you can take time and check the terms and their policies. If they don't allow scraping, then it means if you violate it, they have grounds to sue your company. Yes, but then with the right skills, you can scrape any website you want, and there are millions of websites you can scrape for data. Yes, and there are a lot of data that is open for you to connect to and embed in your application. So this is a valuable skill to have. So web scraping is the process of extracting data from the web. Yes, so you can use Python to go to the web and pull data, extract data from the web into your Python program, into the application you are building. And this is a powerful skill that allows you to have the data you need to be able to complete important projects. It is widely used for data collection, for data analysis, market research, and building applications, and so much more. There are some applications you need to get live data from an external source into the application, and this particular lesson helps you to do that. All right. So to set up your environment for web scraping, there are certain libraries that you need to install. And I should have asked you this before showing you. But last week, we talked about two Python libraries. Who can tell me the names of the two Python libraries we talked about in our previous lesson for web scraping? What are the two top Python libraries that we talked about last week? And I still remember them. Um, so interesting. So what are the libraries? Who can tell me? Someone, I knew you would talk about the soup first. I knew it. I knew you talk about the soup first. So we have BeautifulSoup and request and BeautifulSoup. So this request, it comes with an S, requests. And BeautifulSoup is just a beautiful soup. I don't know which soup is beautiful, but this particular library is BeautifulSoup. It is very popular. So if you work on any big project, you realize that you'll be using BeautifulSoup, and you learning about it now will make a lot of difference in your journey. So first of all, you need to install them, and you install them with pip. Install them with the Python package manager called pip. So pip is installed together with your Python. So if you install Python, pip is also installed for you. And once you have pip, you can just open to your command prompt, or your PowerShell, or your terminal, and just say pip install requests. So this is the first library you need to install. So pip install request, and it will install it for you if you don't have it. So in our previous lesson, we installed it. So you can see that requirement already satisfied. So if you have not watched the previous lesson, please do so that you understand the basics of this particular lesson. And this is going to take you somewhere. The next one is BeautifulSoup 4. So we install version 4. So you go like pip install BeautifulSoup 4. And then you install this as well. Yes, and pip is important. If you want to install any library, you use pip. Yes, if you don't have pandas, you can install pandas. So let's say pip install pandas. You can install pandas if you don't have it to do a lot of data analysis. And talking about pandas, let me show you one thing about pandas. So let me close this, open to another tab, and go to google.colab, and let's run Google Colab. If you have Jupyter Lab, you can also install Jupyter Lab. Sometimes Google Colab takes time to run, so you need to allow it to run. And as we build upon this knowledge, the time will come, we'll be working on AWS SageMaker for machine learning. And you realize that we are using the same environment, the same Jupyter Lab, the same Python, and we are using it to build machine learning models. You see, so the knowledge that we are acquiring, we are going to acquire it in stages. All right. So I'm just going to mention a thing about pandas, and we'll get back on track. So for pandas, you can use pandas when you import it. After it is installed, you can import it. Now, Google Colab is a Jupyter Notebook environment that runs on the web. So you can run your Python code by just going to Google Colab. It's free. If you have a Google account, you can just use it. If you don't have Python installed, you can just use Colab to run your notebooks. All right. So pandas, usually we import pandas as PD. So when you are importing it, you can give an alias like PD so that if you want to use pandas, you can go ahead and use it here as PD. So over here, we can just say PD dot read HTML. And over here, let's find a web page. Let's find a web page. Let's say, let's go to wikipedia.org. And what are we going to look for? Let's find any um, let's search for anything. So I'm going to search for, let's say, machine learning. And so we have something here about machine learning. And let's say I want to search for, let me search for something with a lot of tables. So let me see Python programming. Let me see if we can get something with a lot of tables. Okay, I have one particular web page. Let me just quickly pick it and we'll go ahead and use it. Okay. So I'm just trying to pick any web page with a lot of tables. Let me share this now. All right, so I'm going to use this. I'm going to use this for this demonstration. And I can just paste the URL here. And this, I can store this in a variable like df here. And let me just store it in variable called tables. Let me run this. I'm just showing you something. And over here, let's go ahead and say, let's try this first. Let's say print tables index 0. All right, so let's see what this will generate. And I'm going to use it to explain something here. Let me remove the print and see if it will format it properly. All right, that's better. That's better. All right, so why am I showing you this? Over here, you can see that I'm using pandas to visit a web page. So this is a real web page. And this particular web page, sorry, that is it here. Now, this particular web page has a lot of table data on it. And it's a long web page, a long web page. Now, you can see that with Python and pandas, I was able to visit this link with pandas. This time, not request. I'm not talking about requests yet. So I'm just taking a short pause to talk about pandas. And after that, we'll continue talking about request. So I use PD, which is pandas, to read the HTML link here. So this is the link to the entire web page. And I stored it in tables. Over here, I use a concept of indexing to access index 0. By doing this, I was able to extract this particular table from the website because I said it should give me the first table. If I change this to 1, it will also pick the next table here. Now, what this is doing is extracting data from the web. It's extracting data from the web. Let me try table 2. It also pick another table. You can see clearly that this is a different table. All right, so is this web scraping? Let me see some answer in the chat. Is this web scraping? Let me see if I have table 3. Is this web scraping? So what we are doing here is that we are using pandas and Python to extract data from the web. So the data, pandas has been able to visit the website, has been able to extract all the tables, and is able to give us that data from the website to our application here. And my question is this web scraping? All right, so I've gotten 3 yeses, and of course, this is also web scraping, okay? This is also web scraping. However, this particular technique using pandas is used specifically to extract tabular data. Okay, this particular technique is used to extract tabular data. But the real libraries that you can use to extract the entire HTML and explore every element within the HTML is what we are talking about here called request. So this, you can use pandas to achieve this for tabular data, but then let us switch back to request and explore request and see what request can do. All right, so you can install requests like we said. And after requests, you can also install BeautifulSoup, which is used to parse the HTML and make it easy for you to access the HTML elements. Okay, it makes it easy for you to find and access the HTML elements. So this is what we covered last week. All right, so let's talk more about this particular request. This request library is a powerful tool in Python that allows you to use Python to connect to a server. So number one, it is used to make HTTP requests. What this means is that this is used to connect to a server. It's used to connect to a server. It's a powerful library. It can be used to collect data in terms of requests for data from the web. It can be used to send data. It's so powerful that from Python, you can update content on the web. You can write code in Python that can visit the web and send data to the web, to a database, to a server. You don't just receive, you can also send. It is so powerful. It can also delete. It can update. So this request is so powerful. And if you are studying cybersecurity here, a time will come you are going to be seeing this request as a weapon that you need to build defense against. Why am I saying this? Right now, I'm saying this to the security people. As you progress, you use your Python and you use requests to write code to do a whole lot on web servers, but then you will also put in security defenses against requests. Someone has no idea what I'm talking about. I don't want to get into security here right now, but this is something that hackers can use to write code to attack servers. Okay, think about it. Think about it. You've done Python a little. You've done loops a little. You've done requests a little. You can talk to a server from Python code. Wow, that is all a hacker needs. You can use Python to create a loop and can talk to a server. That's all the information a hacker needs. Think about it. So a hacker who is a Python developer, knowing about this, what can I do with this? I don't want to get into that right now, but this is a weapon as well. All right. So it simplifies interactions with web servers and supports wow. This is incredible. All right. So this particular library, if you study it well, you realize that it does a lot. It does a lot. Not only can it request, it can send data. It can update something on a server. It can delete something on a server. For a second, let's think of one security defense that we need to build against request if this is in the hands of a hacker. Let me see if somebody can think of an attack that can be launched with request. Let me see someone who can tell us something. At least if You've done cybersecurity fundamentals. You know some of the attacks out there. So I'm checking the chat to see if someone can think of a security defense that you can use, or what kind of attack that a hacker can use request for. Look at what request can do. So a hacker who has learned, I'll not say it in the video, but someone has put something powerful. Think about how fast loops are. Just think about how fast loops are. Think about it. Think about how fast loops are. You know how many loops run in a second, a millisecond? And do you know there's something called infinite loops? Infinite loops. And you can talk to a server. So a server that doesn't protect itself against things like this can be attacked with this request. This particular request can not only retrieve, it can send, it can update, and it can also delete. When it comes to the methods we use to perform these actions, one of the method is called the get method. Please type get method in the chat for me. Type get method. Type get method. Type get method. Thank you, Robly. Get method. All right. So this is a method we used last week. And this method is used to retrieve information from a server. So you see that this Python you are learning is now becoming serious. At least this particular lesson, if you think about it, you've seen that it's getting serious. That is how it is. As we advance and advance and advance, then you are seeing that, wow, Python is now becoming something. You see, me, myself, when I started learning Python, I remember questioning myself. I know Python is important. I've heard of what Python can do. But what I'm learning, how am I ever going to use it? When I started learning Python, I had no idea how it is even implemented in any way. I was only writing code and seeing my print results. Simple print. I had no idea how Python was used. But with time, you get to understand that, wow, the Python is becoming serious. And for me, Python has changed my life. I can tell you confidently that I'm sitting here today because of Python. Python has changed my life. So I'm so passionate about Python programming. I want every Rita student to learn Python really well because it will help you. We also have another method which we didn't mention last week, and we will not cover. It is not in the scope of this particular lesson, but I'm going to mention it. It's called a post method. This is a method we use to send data to a server through requests. You see, in Python, you can write code to not only receive or retrieve, but to send the data. Python can be used to send data from code to a server, and the method we use for that is post. So later, the same request library, you will use it to run a post request. Then we also have what is called a put request. Please type post request in the chat for me, at least so that it will register in your mind. And later on, you will encounter it. Yes, post request. Thank you, Yvonne. So happy to see you in class. Then let's type put request. This put request, I didn't say Putin. Last week, I heard a lady and her surname was Putin. I said, how do you get a surname Putin? Why are you Putin? Well, we are talking about the put request in the request library. So this request, it is used to update data on a server. So when request connects to a server, requests can be used to update, data on the server. So you can see what requests can do. And lastly, we have delete. The delete method, or the delete request or delete method, is also used to delete data. So this is what request does. It updates, it deletes, it posts, and most importantly, it gets. So let's talk more about the get request. This get is what we started talking about last week, and we use PyCharm to be able to connect to a server to get this data, to get data from the server. Now, this get request is used to retrieve information from a server. It is a common usage of requests, and it works just like a browser requesting for data. If you have a web browser, you enter a URL and a GET request is sent. Okay, so if you've done some networking and you see the request being sent to the server, you realize that it is a GET request that is going to the server. And it retrieves the HTML content, and the web browser creates the HTML page. Python can be used to do the same thing. So in your Python code, you can write a request to operate as a browser and retrieve the HTML content for you. With Python, you may be interested in the data, not the visuals. And so you get the HTML code and you are left to explore the code to retrieve whatever information you are looking for. When it comes to the GET request, all you need to do is to provide a URL. So long as it is a valid URL, what will happen is that it will visit the page and extract the data for you. The request will go to the server the same way a web browser sends a request to a server, and the server will respond. In web scraping, we use the GET request to fetch the HTML content of the web page. So for example, before you start, you type import request, just like we've been doing. Then you can decide to store your URL in a variable. So I'm storing the link or the URL in a variable called URL. You can use any variable for this. It doesn't have to be called URL. And you can choose not to store your link in a URL. To make your code cleaner, it is good to put it in a variable. You can choose not to store your link in a variable. To make your code cleaner, you can choose to store it in a variable. When you store your code in a variable, all you do is to implement the get. So the get we're talking about, this is how we use it, the get request. This is how we use it. With the get, this is how we use it. This is how we use it, that's all. This particular request you are seeing here is coming from the import of the library. Because we have imported this, we just want to use it. This is why we are calling it here. Okay, this is why we are calling it here. And over here, we could have entered the website address here directly, but we are doing it this way because we stored the address in a variable called URL. So this is how we do a GET request. Does this make sense to somebody? Does this make sense to somebody? Yes. So Ruben says yes, it makes a lot of sense. So this is how we use a GET. So when it comes to using posts, you realize that the only part of the code you are going to be changing will be this part. This is the part you'll be changing if you are doing a post request. Because we are doing a GET request, this is how to do it. Now, this is a website here, w3.org. Let me open it and let's see what we will find there. So we'll type w3.org. Let me put it here because I'm showing in full screen. So, all right. So when you see W3, W3 stands for World Wide Web. When you see W3, so the World Wide Web Consortium or W3 Consortium, they develop standards and guidelines to help everyone build a web-based, build a web application or build any website or web page or web system based on standards or principles of accessibility, internationalization, privacy, and security. So this is a global W3C website, also created and invented by the inventor of the World Wide Web, Tim Berners-Lee, that we talked about yesterday. So this website provides standards and guidelines for building standardized web applications and web systems. So we want to connect to this particular web page or website or web page using Python. So let's go to our our Python, and open to PyCharm. So I'm going to create a new simple project. And I believe you've sent your assignments to assignment@retailafrica.org. I saw some of the submissions that some of you are yet to send yours. So please do that. Let me right click on the project folder, new Python, and let's call this request.py. Don't forget the .py. So we are creating a request Python file. And what is the first line of code to write? Let's do this together. What is the first line of code? We want to visit w3.org. Is that not the website? The website is called w3.org. Okay, so how do we do that with requests? So what is the first line of code? Someone should put it in the chat for me. Let's do this together. How do we visit it with Python? All right, so what do we do? What's the first line of code? Okay, Ruben says we should import requests. All right, if you can do this, that's so you've done the first thing. Okay, you've imported request. If you see an underline in Python, you can look at it and it says that unused. Of course, we'll use it. Don't worry about it. Okay, so what is the next line of code? How do we visit this website using request? Okay, we are going to talk to the server right now. How do we do that using request? What's the second line of code? What's the second line of code? So most of you give the first line. What's the second line of code? How do we visit this website? How do we visit this website using request? All right. Okay, so we are not talking about BeautifulSoup yet. Let's put BeautifulSoup aside and let's explore requests for a little. Okay, so assign the URL to a variable. Thank you, Robly. All right, so let me use Robly's statement as a comment. So assign the URL to a variable. Okay, this is what Robly said. So I'm going to do that. So we can call our variable as anything. Okay, so let's give it, instead of URL, let's call it the link. You can just call it the link. So this line is not compulsory, but just to make your code cleaner, you can store it there. So the link is https://www.w3.org. This is the link. So now that we have the link, how do we access the site? What do we do now? Who can tell us now? How do we access it? This has not yet connected. This has not yet connected. Thank you, Zeph. Okay, so Hillary says we should use request.get. All right. So Hillary is right. Let's now call our request and say .get. So this is how we use a get. And what do I put as the argument for this particular get method? What do I use as the argument? What do I use as an argument? Okay, the link. Thank you, Valerie. So we'll put the link here. So that is it. This line is the most important line to connect to the server. So what we would put here is send a GET request, or let's put a comment, connect to the server. That's it. This is the most important line. So all that you are learning about requests as a library and the GET request to retrieve, remember the GET is to retrieve. You can also post. You can also put, you can also delete. This is the most important line. To make your code cleaner, you can store this in a variable. So let's store it in a variable called response. Is it okay to store it in a variable? Is it okay to store it in a variable? All right, so Robley says it's fine. So we'll store it in a variable called response. So now that we have this particular response here, it means we have been able to, do that. So now we have connected, and this particular variable is now storing all the data that the website provides. Next, you can do a lot with it. Right now, I'm just going to do a printing of the text. Okay, these are the responses, and I'll take you through some of the responses. We are going to do a printing of the text. So what we will do is to say print response.text. All right, so let's go ahead and print it and see if it works. If not, look at what is wrong. Okay, so I'm getting some errors. It says partially initialized module request has no attribute get. Okay, all right. So let's see if there is any error over here. So this request is requests, right? Oh, I have not installed request. I've installed it. All right. And everything here is okay. There's nothing wrong here. Let me see. It says that import resolves to its containing file, module request. Okay. All right. Let me copy this same code, but I want you to look at it for any error. It's part of learning. Let's come to Google Colab, and let me open to a new notebook. So let's say google.colab, and let's open to a new notebook, and let's run the same code and see if it fails. We have given the file name as a library we are important. Okay, good. All right, so let's see what is the file name here. Let's try it on Colab and see if it will run. So here, if we're able to see an error, then we know there's something wrong. I mean, if we're able to see the content, we know there's nothing wrong. If we get an error, then there's an error. So it's connected, and did it work? Did it work? Do you think it worked? All right, so Robbly says it worked. So there's nothing wrong here at all. So I'll find out what is going on with the PyCharm. Maybe I need to. Okay, so the file name. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. I think probably All right, so let's copy our code. I think it's confusing this. It's treating it as a module. Oh, you're right. You're right. So this is a name conflict. It's a name conflict. Let me delete it. Then we'll talk about it and I'll get it. So over here, you can see that the file we are using is called requests. And here we are importing requests. So it is conflicting with the request library. You know, if you study about modules, a module is a Python file. So if you say import request, what you are doing is that you are saying import request.py. So it's like I'm importing the same file into the same project. I'm importing the same file into the same project, and I'm trying to access its methods. But this file doesn't have methods, so there's a conflict here. It's confusing with this file and the request library. So what we can do is to forget about it. And if I don't delete it, I think request will no longer work on my machine. So let me delete it and it will save my machine from using the right request. All right. Thank you, Hilary. Yeah, so errors are part of learning, and you can see that we have discovered something. So don't create a file called pandas. Don't create a file called BeautifulSoup. So if I wanted to say request, I could have added something to it. Okay, requests something, requests projects.py. So this is where the error is coming from. I got it. So let's paste this here and you see that the error will no longer be there. So now this import is importing the right library. At first, it was importing my own file. So it's confused with the library. So now we are not going to get an error. We are going to get a code. It's working. Thank you, Hilary. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. All right. So now that we've gotten the code, we have access to the entire code. This entire code that we are seeing here, you are left with your Python skills to be able to look through this code and fetch any data you are looking for. Now, with Python, if you learn about string manipulations, okay, I can store all of this as data, or I can call this HTML data. I can put this in a variable. So this HTML data is actually the data that we got from this particular .get. We stored it in response, and we used response to retrieve the text. The text is the HTML data. I repeat, the text here, when we got it, the attributes that we wanted from the response was the text. And the text is the HTML data. That is what we printed. So if I come here and I say print the HTML data, I'm going to get exactly what we got previously, the HTML data. So anytime you use request, if you need the HTML data, then what you do is that you retrieve the .text. Please type .text in the chat for me. Because .text is not the only attribute of the response. The server doesn't just give you the data, it comes with other metadata and other data. But the .text is the actual HTML data. Thank you, Robley and Ruben. Now, you can see the .text here. The .text attribute gives you the raw HTML content on the web page. So the actual HTML is what it gives to you as text. Do whatever you want with the code. So the HTML code is the .text. So just like we did here, the dot text is the HTML content. Is there something else apart from the text? What do you think? Do you think there'll be something else apart from the text? Let me know in the chat. Would there be something else apart from the text? Okay, Ruben says yes. All right. So let's find out what else is there if not only the text, because we have just connected to a server and we use a get method. This code is so powerful. This went to the server. But then what it gave to this variable response, what it gave to this variable response is not just the HTML code. There is other metadata and data that came to the response. But if we are looking for the HTML, the way to get the HTML is to get a .text attribute. What other attribute do we have? Okay, thank you, Robly. Thank you so much. You are very helpful. In web scraping, you can analyze or extract part of this HTML directly by searching or slicing. You see, this is why I said once you get the HTML code, what is left is for you to rely on your Python skills to continue from here. Okay, did you do string manipulation? Okay, can you run a .find with string? Because this is now string. Okay, so let's say you did slicing too, right? And you did indexing. Okay, fine. So can you index out and pick only this? Okay, you try. And use slicing, indexing, .find to see if you can pick only this. So you've been given raw data, a lot of data, a whole lot, and some are a lot more. You can use your Python string manipulation, and this string manipulation later we will advance it. There are a lot of methods we need to learn about string manipulation. You can explore this string and pick any data you want. But then it is hard to, and a lot of work to be using .find, slicing, indexing, and a whole lot to extract what you are looking for. That is why they have created another library called BeautifulSoup. BeautifulSoup is incredible. What it will do is that it will pass this HTML content more efficiently. And it will remove unnecessary, I repeat, unnecessary information from the HTML to make the HTML look better. Please type better in the chat for me. To make the HTML look better. Type better in the chat for me. All right. So we've not gotten to BeautifulSoup, but let's look at this HTML. And let's look at what BeautifulSoup will do for us so that we can easily extract what we are looking for during scraping. So to use BeautifulSoup, you can say from BS4, import BeautifulSoup. All right. Now, if you have BeautifulSoup here and this particular response of text that we have stored as HTML data, okay, let's come here and use this particular HTML data and create a variable called soup. Please type soup in the chat for me. Thank you. You guys are amazing. Type soup in the chat for me. Okay. So I can just say soup. This soup is not the main code. It's just a variable we are creating called soup. In the Python community, everybody types soup for this type of operation. So it's popular to see soup over here. But what we are looking for is this module method we have imported. here called BeautifulSoup. And this BeautifulSoup has two arguments. The first argument is the HTML data that you are looking for. You want it to work on for you. So I give it the HTML data, and then I need to provide another parameter called HTML parser. Okay. Later, we will talk more about this HTML parser. But what this HTML parser does is to parse this. Now, BeautifulSoup has multiple functions. If you call this HTML parser, what it will do is to parse the HTML data you have. You see? So when you call this as a function, you give your, or a class, you give your HTML data as an argument, or a parameter. Then you give this feature as well. So what BeautifulSoup will do is to work on what you have provided with this feature and create an object called soup. Now this soup, instead of printing this, we can say soup dot prettify, because soup is an object that is holding our HTML data. Let's print this prettify, which is a method that later we'll explore to understand BeautifulSoup. And let's run it now. And what you will see now is another version of your HTML code. If you can look at this code now, this is the same HTML data, but with less distractions or distraction. This is the same HTML data that BeautifulSoup has removed unnecessary code and made it easy for you to target. And working like the way Pandas works allows you to be able to explore the elements, the HTML elements. Now, not only has it prettified it, it has also made it easy. Instead of you using indexing, slicing, .find to go through that raw HTML, this time, what BeautifulSoup has done, not only is their code looking better, I'll show you why it is looking better. Very soon, you see the difference. Not only is the code looking better, you can target any HTML element this time because of the BeautifulSoup. If we don't use BeautifulSoup to soupify, I said soupify, prettify. Oh, what is soup? Oh my goodness. Let's print the HTML data like this. When you print the HTML data, okay, this is a raw HTML. Now, this raw HTML, I want to prove to you that it is better when you prettify it. I nearly said soupify again. Let me target one area, like, let's just go down. Let's target this area. Look at how these are disorganized. It doesn't matter how organized or disorganized it is, but let's look at this particular area. We'll come back here. We can see help, donate, legal, corporation, system status, contact. Okay, we'll take note of that when we prettify it. Okay, and this area here with this li lists, let's look at how this looks like. It says class clean lists row list. Okay, let's look at this last part with the JavaScript here. after the footer. Okay, at least we've seen something. Let's go back to our code and remove the raw HTML and go back to soup. Let's print the soup.prettify. All right. So let's run it again and scroll back down there and see if it looks better. Okay. So let's go back to where those links were and see. Let's go back there and see. Okay, so this is HTML. So if you understand HTML, it's a lot of advantage. Now you can see that the code is less now than before. So any unnecessary part has been taken out. Look at this corporation status, system status, legal and policies, donate. Okay. So what it has done is to arrange it in order of the elements and in order of hierarchy, so that when I call this particular element, I can call its child here. It has arranged it. It has removed unnecessary code. It has removed unnecessary code, and it has made it much better. I'm just checking the time. I will try a simpler code for you to see how Beautiful Soup clearly makes it better. So let me just find something that we will just try and you just see the difference clearly. Okay. So this same thing we've done, I'm going to show you another code and we'll look at the results. So let me store the code somewhere that we will all look at. And then we will see how we can use Beautiful Soup to see the effect of Beautiful Soup. And after that, we'll talk about the various attributes of the response and we'll end today's session. The goal of this lesson is to let you pick up some important information about requests, and it will be used to build up from there. So let me share my screen now and let's see. Okay. So I'm going to open to, I think we can use Colab. And I'm going to show you an HTML code here. Okay, so this is HTML code. Let me show you the code here. All right. So when you look at this HTML code, this is it. Okay, I'll just give you a simple code so that we will see how Beautiful Soup can have an impact on it to simplify it or prettify it. Now, let's send it here. Let me clear the code we have here. And let me paste this new code here. Now, to explain this new code, I imported Beautiful Soup. This time I'm not importing request because I'm just showing you something about Beautiful Soup. And here, instead of using request to fetch HTML, because the work of request was to fetch the HTML, here I've created a variable called messy HTML in a multi-line string. So the same HTML code I showed you in Notepad is the same code I have pasted here. This is the same as writing response.txt when you pull the HTML from a server. This time I'm not pulling from a server. I'm just doing a simple illustration or demonstration here. So remember how we created our soup and called BeautifulSoup. You provide the HTML here. Our HTML is stored in a variable called messy HTML. So we have it here. Then you apply the HTML.parser to it. After you do that, you can just go ahead and print the soup.prettify. So let's print this here and say soup.prettify, the same code as we had before. So when I run this now, you can see the BeautifulSoup version. So look at the BeautifulSoup version of the same HTML code. First of all, this HTML code lacks intelligence. It is just a chunk of text. There is no intelligence here as to calling this particular element. It is just text. If you want to extract this element, you need to use Python string manipulation to find a way of extracting this. But in web scraping, that is a difficult work. When you use BeautifulSoup, not only will it clean up the messy code, look at what it has done here. It has broken the code into elements. Wow. Over here, even when you check HTML, it does more than this. It does more than this. It does more than this. It has broken the code into elements and has created a hierarchy for you. So it cleans the code. This is what a parsing means. And apart from that, it applies intelligence to the code. This means if I know what to do, I can target this element directly. If I know what I'm doing. This is now HTML code with intelligence that I can get into and select using BeautifulSoup. All right. So you can use your HTML to explore the you can use your Python skills to explore the HTML directly, or you can use BeautifulSoup to parse the HTML more efficiently, allowing you to navigate and extract the elements like the tags, the attributes, and text in a structured way. So the example I gave clearly shows you how BeautifulSoup has an effect on your raw code. Apart from response.text, which I asked you to put in a chat, we can also do response.status code. So when we go back to PyCharm, we are going to learn something new right now. Let me remove BeautifulSoup. I didn't even plan to talk about BeautifulSoup, at least not yet. So this is the code we had, and we went ahead and we printed our HTML data. Instead of printing HTML data, and remember, instead of storing it here, let me comment it out. You can also go ahead and say print response.text. And we learned that printing response.text simply means printing the HTML code. So when I run this, I'm going to get the HTML code. That's what it means. And right now we are learning that .text is not the only attribute. You can also get the status code. Okay. Who knows the status code right now? If you know the status code, please put it in the chat for me. What status code are we going to get? Who knows it? I'm sure I know that at least 3 people know it. Okay, so I'm getting 200. Thank you, Benedine. Robly. So 200 will show here. Okay, what in the world is 200? 200 is a code, and it means something. So I can just say that print the code for me. Maybe I will not say that print the code, but I will say that if the code is 404, that means the page was not found. Instead of showing errors to my users, show something else. You see how the code can be important. So the status code attribute provides the HTML status code of the response. So I can choose to get a .text or I can choose to get a status code. If I want to get a status code, this is what I will do, just like we did. What are the status codes? At least let's look at 3 status codes. What is code 200? Who can tell me the meaning of code 200? What is code 200? What is code 200? Okay, so Emeka says successful. This means that the link works. The link you provided is correct. The link is working. It's not a wrong link. So it was successful. Have you ever used a web browser and you got 404 error before? They've written it on the screen. 404. It's a general HTTP error. Have you ever gotten that error before? 404 error on a web page? Yes, Ruben has gotten it. And that's 404. What does it mean? What does it mean? All right. So as a webmaster, I'll talk about the next error. It means page not found. Hey, we encounter this a lot. We encounter this a lot. So sometimes you will come and the link here may not be correct. Maybe let's add something, wrong link, page numbers. And let's run this again. Right now, we are using Python to access the web, just like a browser. When we run this, let's see the response. Okay, so we even have a lot of errors here. Apart from that, let's even say that the correct website is here. And let's look for any wrong page that does not exist. .html. And let's run it here. So let's see the code we are going to get. Okay, wait a minute. I've seen the code. What code did we get? What code did we get now? Please tell me the code we got. We got 404, right? This 404, it means that your Python code could not find the page you are looking for. So if in Python you have studied the if statements, you can say that if response.status equals to 404, do so and so. Elif response equals 500, do so and so. Else print connected successfully. This makes sense, okay? So what this means is that by knowing the names of the error codes, you can do something with it. These codes are standard HTTP codes. So 200 on the web always means successful. 404 means page not found. And if you're a webmaster, one day you will encounter 500. 500 means something is wrong with the server. Either an htaccess file is corrupt, something went wrong, and you can't find it can't resolve to the server. You are going to encounter 500 a lot. The server has a problem. I've encountered it more than 500 times. This error code 500. So these are the error codes, and you can use them in your programming. And with the explanation I gave you, you can use an if statement to run this code. So this time you are not targeting response.text, you are targeting response.status code. So instead of printing it, you can just use an if and say if response or status code equals to 404, print, okay, let's print an F string and say that there was an error. The page was not found. All right. So instead of allowing your program to crash, you can write an intelligent code. You see how I've used the status code. All right. Sometimes when you are building a project that will do scraping, the scraping code is in the middle of millions of codes. Okay, listen to me. This is why we learn in pieces. The code that does the scraping is put in the middle of millions of code. And so if you don't write the code to handle errors, it means that the scraping part alone can break down the whole application or the whole process. You can put a scraping code in a function. And because you are connecting to a server, if there's an error with the server that someone else is controlling, it can affect your program. So most of the time, you handle errors in the code as well. And this is one way to handle errors. There are other ways to handle errors. I'm going to end the class, but I'm going to talk one last time about .json response. Please type .json in the chat for me. Type .json in the chat for me. Type .json in the chat for me. .json, I'm going to end the class in 7 minutes. .json, all right. So let's go back to our code. And let's go back to when we were printing response.text. All right. What did we learn about response.text? We learned that response.text is going to give us the HTML content. Let's run it. Okay, so we have an error, so it won't work. It won't work. We have an error, so it won't work. Let me see what to show. The web page is wrong, so it's not going to run. So I'm just waiting for the response. If not, I'm going to, okay. I don't know what it found. Okay, it found this. You can see that page not found. At least it told us the truth. All right, but let me clear this page not found and leave the correct link. Now, when we run it, we know that we are going to get correct HTML code. This is correct code and it's working. The title is W3C. All right, with BeautifulSoup, we can target a title, print the title, just like we did last week. Now, instead of printing the text, you can say .json. Now, this .json is a function that does something, and it may give you an error or it may work. Let's run it and see. What did we get? Did we get an error or it worked? Did we get an error or it worked? What did we get? Okay, we got an error, but .json is another attribute of the response that comes from the server. Why is it giving us an error? Who can tell us why? So I'm just using this question to find out if somebody knows why. I'm giving you 1 minute. I'm about to end the lesson now. Why are we getting an error using a correct attribute? Why are we getting an error? This is very important when it comes to extracting data from the web. That is why I'm asking you this question. Why are we getting an error when we are using an attribute that is correct? There's nothing wrong with the attribute. As a matter of fact, it's correct code, but why are we getting error? All right, so I have 10 seconds. If I don't get the answer, then I'll tell you why. You see, when it comes to web scraping or getting external data, this time let me call it external data because most of the time when we are using APIs, we are mostly getting external data. With the technique of web scraping and by using requests, we can choose to download the HTML content, which is the text, or we can choose to pull out API data in the JSON format. What do I mean by that? We can choose to pull data in the form of JSON, which will be converted to Python dictionaries, or we can choose to download the HTML code. Now, we are getting an error because this web page is not an API endpoint, or in simple terms, it is not leading to a JSON code. Because it is not a JSON content that is on that link, if you try to retrieve the .json, you get an error. So the .json method passes the response content into Python dictionaries or Python lists, assuming the content is in JSON format. Most of the time, when you are working with data on the web, you are going to retrieve JSON data. So this link is a different link that has JSON code. It has JSON code. So when I say print.json, I'm not going to get an error. Let me copy that link and we will use it in our code and we will see if it will work this time. So when I paste it here and I run this, let's see the code. Did it work? Yes or no? Did it work? Yes or no? Did it work? Yes or no? Yes. So right now, do you know why the .json didn't work with the first link? Do you know why the .json didn't work with the first link? If yes, tell me why it didn't work with the first link. Why is it that the .json did not work with the first link? When I get the answer, then I'll end the lesson here. Next time, we will take it further to get better understanding because this is something you'll be using. If you will be writing Python for data analysis, for data science, for cybersecurity, for anything in cloud anywhere, you will be using this. You will. So Robly says that the first link was not in JSON format, period. Period. It wasn't JSON data that was on the web page. So the new link that we have, watch this. If you try opening it, you will see that, sorry, I put some quotation marks around it. You will see that this link leads to JSON code, and most APIs are in JSON code. And in data analysis, sometimes we extract JSON and we work with JSON. Other times we extract HTML and we work with HTML. And so if you are working with HTML, you use the text, response or text, and we are saying response because we give the code to a variable called response. So use response.text for HTML, and if you are retrieving JSON, you use response.what? 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 If you are doing JSON, it is response.what? Response.what.json. So this brings us to the end of this lesson. I hope you have learned one thing from this class. If you're a Python learner like me, this should be a valuable source of information that you have picked something from. I want to believe that you picked something from this lesson, and I'm going to see you next week, and we will explore more in Python. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next lesson. All the best. Bye-bye.